It's a military loss that has sent shockwaves all around the world. Moskva, the Russian Navy's Black Sea flagship, has been sunk. It's at the bottom of the Black Sea. The question is, was there an accidental fire that doomed the ship? Or, as Ukraine claims, was there a missile attack that sunk this enormous Russian cruiser? What's the truth? Either way, huge blow for Putin's fleet. The pride of the Russian Navy in the Black Sea off Ukraine's southern coast. 13,000 tons of pure weaponry, nearly 200 meters long, and with 500 warrior sailors on board. But the formidable guided missile cruiser you see in these images may be a thing of the past, because the Moskva has in all likelihood been destroyed. It started with the Russian Ministry of Defense revealing that a massive onboard fire had dealt extensive damage to this warship, with reports revealing that the entire crew of the Russian flagship had been evacuated from the vessel as onboard ammunition exploded in the blaze. But Russia's claim that the ship was damaged in an accident have been pushed back hard by Ukraine, which claims that the vessel was struck by Ukrainian Neptune cruise missiles fired from the Odessa region. Oleksiy Arestovich, an advisor to the Ukrainian president, also quipped in an interview today that he was aware of the fire but did not specifically know the cause, joking that maybe some Russian soldiers had been smoking where they shouldn't have been.
Здесь, мы всегда к этому готовы, пусть летит, посмотрим. Надо просто помнить, что на любой выстрел по нашим органам управления у нас найдется.
On day 50 of this conflict, Ukraine has scored a major hit. This cruiser was armed with anti-ship, anti-submarine and surface-to-air missiles, and this is an indication that despite 50 days of conflict, Russia hasn't been able to neutralize all the surface-to-air missiles and anti-ship missiles. And this is exactly what Ukraine's President Zelensky has been seeking: anti-ship missiles, surface-to-air missiles, longer-range missiles to take on the Russian forces, along with fighter jets and T-72 tanks.
A sensational claim being made by sections on the Ukrainian side are that a Bayraktar drone was flown over the Black Sea to distract the Moskva warship and divert its attention, while Ukrainian cruise missile units mounted their secret attack on the warship. This claim too cannot be confirmed, though Russia did release footage just 2 days ago of another of its Black Sea Fleet ships appearing to shoot down what they claim is a combat drone from the Ukrainian side. A fourth possibility being considered is that the ship ran into a bed of Ukrainian sea mines and exploded on contact, raising a big nuclear alarm. According to a few reports, the Russian warship may have actually been carrying 2 nuclear warheads. Ukraine has called for an urgent probe into the incident, considering that the possibility of it carrying nuclear warheads raises temperatures to an exponential degree. As this war of claims and counterclaims continues, what is undeniable is that Russia's most formidable warship in the Black Sea has been stricken and evacuated. Russia, as expected, has denied the ship sank due to a Ukrainian attack. The Defense Ministry claimed that the ship sank due to a storm after being gutted in a fire. But the Moskva, a ship named after Russia's beloved capital, will no longer be a weapon of war in this fight. And that's a big blow, no matter which way you look at it. With Gaurav Sawant in Dnipro, Ukraine, Bureau Report, India Today. Now, apart from being an obvious and enormous symbolic loss, because the Moskva was, after all, the flagship, the lead ship of the Black Sea Fleet of the Russian Navy, it's also a huge military impact, a huge military loss for the Russian armed forces, because this was a ship that was armed to the teeth. It had, scores of anti-ship missiles. It had formidable deck guns. It had anti-submarine rockets, of different kinds that it was able to deploy. This was a ship that was truly a floating armory. It had all kinds of weapons. It also had S-300, surface-to-air air defense missiles. It also had OSA-M, short-range surface-to-air, missiles. It had a Kamov-27 helicopter. So all of the weapon systems on board this ship made it a formidable anti-ship land attack and air defense platform. And the loss of this ship, apart from the symbolic loss, apart from the intangible effect that it will have on Russia's reputation and military strength, it's also a huge loss of a potent war machine. Now, whether or not Ukraine actually sank the Moskva will perhaps never be known. But what we do know is that Ukraine has been flooded with some of the most advanced weapons, courtesy NATO, over the last couple of months since the invasion actually began. And one type of weapon that the Ukrainians have been using to devastating effect is anti-tank weapons. Anti-tank guided missiles from NATO have been put into the hands of Ukrainian units across the country, and they've been giving a nightmare to Russian tanks and vehicles. Take a look.
A dramatic new video from the Ukraine war zone. It shows a Ukrainian anti-tank unit ambushing a Russian tank lurking nearby. The missile zips into the air, swiftly locks, and dives into the tank, destroying it. The weapon you see being used here is a US-made Javelin, a lethal NATO-supplied anti-tank missile system that Ukraine is now flooded with. A missile that's largely responsible for the huge price Russian tanks and vehicles are having to pay as part of the ground invasion. The Javelin is a new generation fire-and-forget missile that uses automatic infrared guidance that allows the user to seek cover immediately after firing, hugely improving survivability of infantry troops in anti-tank operations. This priceless quality has allowed Ukrainian troops to hit Russian tanks without revealing their positions. Another anti-tank weapon that's allowing the Ukrainians to give Russian armor sleepless nights is the one you see in this clip, shot from a window in the besieged eastern city of Mariupol. The British-Swedish NLAWs, or next-generation light anti-tank weapon. The NLAWs is also in Ukrainian hands in large numbers. It's a fire-and-forget, lightweight, shoulder-fired, disposable, single-use missile system designed for use by infantry on the move. Between these two NATO anti-tank weapons, Putin's giant convoy that was trying to encircle Kyiv is said to have suffered heavy losses, unable to fully meet its objectives. The two missiles have also heaped misery on the Russian supply lines attempting to serve its frontline armor units. A third NATO anti-tank weapon that's inbound into Ukraine soon is the German Panzerfaust 3, a modern semi-disposable recoilless anti-tank weapon. The Panzerfaust 3 is operated by at least 11 countries and has first seen combat in Afghanistan. This trio of Javelin, NLAWs and Panzerfaust 3 make it clear just how large Ukraine's anti-tank weaponry needs are, with NATO regularly feeding that hunger. Apart from foreign NATO-supplied weapons, Ukraine has also been making use of the Skiff, a locally developed anti-tank missile system that's been used to some effect against Russian tanks, as depicted in this video of an attack on a Russian T-72 tank recently. The huge number of Russian tanks and vehicles inside Ukraine is still only a fraction of what Putin's forces can deploy in the country if deemed necessary. And that's why Ukraine feels it simply cannot get enough anti-tank weapons. With each incoming load of such weaponry, Putin's tanks are placed just a little more on notice. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, please never forget that Russia is a superior military power in every sense. It has formidably larger weapons, larger forces, but it has been given a formidable fight by Ukraine, supported by the West and NATO. But Russia has also brought to bear some of its most intimidating weapons, including long-range missiles, in this fight. Take a look at just a handful of the longest-range missiles it has entered directly into this conflict, some of them used for the first time in combat. A brooding night sky over the Black Sea, torn apart by 4-caliber cruise missiles launched from a Russian Navy Buyan M missile boat. Their targets, Ukrainian sites near the country's capital, Kyiv. Capable of hitting targets hundreds of kilometers away with devastating accuracy, the use of caliber cruise missiles signals a shift into the realm of advanced weaponry in the second phase of this war. The Russian Ministry of Defense has flaunted this video of the Iskander short-range ballistic missile as well, being used to target a claimed foreign mercenary unit using a Kyiv shopping mall as a reloading base for its rocket units. The third major Russian missile system being used is the Yakhont high-speed cruise missile, seen here being launched against a Ukrainian weapons depot in the western part of the country. The Yakhont is a progenitor of the Indo-Russian BrahMos missile in service with the Indian Armed Forces. And the missile that Russia has used for the first time in combat, the Kinzhal hypersonic air-launched cruise missile, seen here smashing into a Ukrainian underground weapons depot. The Kinzhal is a nuclear-capable weapon that has, of course, been used only with conventional warheads in Ukraine. Four advanced Russian missile systems, all four being used in anger against Ukraine. The damage they're causing, plain for their makers and the world to see. Of course, there's another Russian missile that's on operational alert amidst this Ukrainian crisis. A weapon stored away secretly inside Russia's Bore-class nuclear ballistic missile submarines. A weapon that will hopefully never be used. The Bulava, a submarine-launched intercontinental range ballistic missile. A Cold War weapon that could bring about the end of the world if ever fired in anger. A weapon whose heightened state of alert has sparked nuclear fears across the world. As Russia's war in Ukraine rumbles forward in its second month, missile power will define the onward march. Bureau Report, India Today. Now, armed drones have also played a huge, very visible role in the conflict so far. An advanced piece of drone machinery that Ukraine's about to get is called the Switchblade. It's made in the United States, and in the hands of Ukrainian drone operators, this could provide a new wave of nightmares for Russian forces. Take a look. This is about the Switchblade kamikaze drone.
Ukraine using its missiles and drones given by the West to make the war more equal, taking out Russian jets, choppers and tanks with devastating ferocity. Ukraine's fabled Bayraktar drones have been immensely helpful for embattled Kyiv, proving to be the Brahmastra in its arsenal. And now there's a massive leg up for Ukraine, as Pentagon plans to gift it 10 of the newest Switchblade drones with the reputation of the most potent tank killers. under a $300 million aid to Ukraine. The tank-buster drones work in kamikaze fashion, plunging at the target after waiting stealthily. The swift suicide dive ends in complete destruction of the target. The Switchblade 600 drone, weighing 24 kgs, is designed specifically to attack tanks flying distances up to 40 kilometers, loitering over a target for about 40 minutes. They can also use warheads meant for javelin missiles. The small drones, made by Aerovironment Ammunition Major, carrying warhead, detonates on impact. As officials call it, the flying shotgun. The early version of these dive-bombing drones was secretly sent to Afghanistan in 2010 to fight the Taliban. The US says the Switchblade 600s are a higher level of technology that provides Ukraine additional capacity to go after Russian armor formations.
We've already sent in 100 Switchblade UAVs that were already in our stocks. We sent them in from those stocks. I don't know where they are in the transshipment process, but they arrived over the earlier this week. So they'll be getting into Ukraine quickly if they aren't already there. That's the 100 that President Biden announced a couple of weeks ago.
Will the new Brahmastra drones in Ukraine arsenal prove to be a game changer in the combat? Bureau Report, India Today.
When the invasion of Ukraine had begun, Russia had made the extravagant claim that they've completely knocked out Ukraine's air defense capability. Now, in the last 2 months, that has proven to not quite be the case. Even though there has been extensive damage to Ukrainian systems and air defense units, they've been flooded with Nato weaponry, like Stingers and other missile systems that have allowed them to really put up a fight against superior Russian air power. Take a look at the Star Streak, another NATO weapon that's now in Ukrainian hands to devastating effect.
Over 33 days, Russian aircraft have been raining hell on Ukraine. But Russian aircraft have also been facing hell in the country, with large numbers of fighters and helicopters brought down by bruised but determined Ukrainian air defense units. Since the beginning of the war, Ukraine has been awash with lethal Stinger shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles, a weapon that has imposed a huge cost on Russia's air power superiority and will to dominate. But now, after over a month of constant bombardment, with its cities reeling from a second wave of Putin's aerial strikes, a new weapon is flowing into Ukraine. One that will give it even more teeth against Putin's air force. Days after the NATO summit in Brussels, the Boris Johnson government in the United Kingdom has decided to supply Ukraine with Star Streak, the fastest short-range air defense missile system in existence. The man-portable shoulder-fired Star Streak system fires missiles that accelerate to up to 4 times the speed of sound, blindingly zooming into their targets. The weapon then launches 3 laser beam-riding sub-munitions, increasing the likelihood of a successful hit on their target. The Star Streak has a number of advantages over the Stinger and Igla systems currently being used by Ukrainian air defense troops. Most notably, the Star Streak cannot be jammed by infrared or radar countermeasures. Britain's air defense commander has declared that Russian pilots will think twice about getting into their planes after British soldiers have trained their Ukrainian counterparts to fire Star Streak. With this latest NATO weapon entering a high-tech battlefield, will this give Putin's air power impulses reason to stay grounded? Or has Putin already war-gamed Ukraine's new defenses? Watch this space to find out what happens next. Bureau Report, India Today.
Now, on the back of very alarming reports from Ukraine that the Moskva cruiser may have been sunk with nuclear weapons on board, the entire nuclear flavor of this conflict has gone up several notches. And let's never forget that since the beginning of the conflict, Russia has been talking about the possibility of nuclear warfare. It's put its arsenals on operational alert, and nuclear temperatures by and large have been rising quite steadily. Take a look at the nuclear weapons wielded by the world and how the world is now on nuclear notice.
Debris, devastation, damage. The Ukraine war, an image of the brute power of modern militaries. But nothing comes close to the kind of doom that would become real if the threats being thrown about by the powers at play come to life. With Putin putting the world on nuclear notice by placing his strategic arsenal on war alert, you may be wondering about the strength of the world's nuclear weapons arsenal. You may not know this, but Vladimir Putin currently controls the world's largest stockpile of nuclear weapons.
Russia, during this crisis, has made not one, not two, but 3 nuclear threats. They've even operationalized and put on high alert their nuclear arsenal. Here's a look at the number of nuclear warheads that each country is known to have just now, because it's all about the numbers. Russia is the country with the largest nuclear arsenal, with over 6,200 nuclear warheads at this point of time. The United States has just a few, somewhat fewer warheads, no less powerful, at 5,550. And then there's China, which has 350 nuclear weapons at this time. For comparison, the only other two NATO countries in Europe that have nuclear weapons are, of course, France, which has 290. You've got UK, which has 225. Pakistan has 164. Remember, in the nuclear world, these numbers are enough to destroy the world many times over. India has 156 nuclear weapons. Israel has about 90. North Korea, we think, has between 40 and 50 nuclear weapons.
Each of the nuclear powers also have formidable delivery systems to deliver their weapons of mass destruction. Starting with the most secretive and stealthy platforms, nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, some of which Russia had sailed into the North Atlantic at the beginning of this invasion of Ukraine.
So starting with the Russian nuclear ballistic missile submarines, like we said, is the Bore class of submarine. There are 10 that are supposed to be in service, and their main weapon is the Bulava intercontinental submarine-launched ballistic missile. The Bore class is the mainstay. Moving on to the United States, they have a fleet of 14 Ohio-class SSBMs, or ballistic missile nuclear-powered submarines. The Trident ICBM is the primary nuclear weapon on those submarines. Then you've got China, which has a fleet of 6 Jin-class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, which have the Julang-2 missile, which is their major primary deterrent weapon. Moving on to France, it has the Triomphant class, a fleet of 4 such submarines, nuclear ballistic missile submarines, where they've got their own weapon system on board those as well. Those also go out on strategic deterrent patrols. Moving on to India, of course, we've got 2 Arihant class nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines. The Agni series of missiles and their derivatives, the K-15 and the K-4 missiles, are our nuclear-capable submarine-launched missiles on that particular submarine. And finally, the United Kingdom has the Vanguard class, a fleet of 4 nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines, where the US-built Trident missiles are the primary nuclear weapon on board those submarines. So many, many nuclear-powered ballistic missile submarines already in the world.
Nuclear powers also have land-launched ballistic missiles designed for intercontinental range nuclear delivery. Russia depends on its arsenal of Topol-M long-range ballistic missiles designed for nuclear strike out to ranges of 11,000 kilometers. The US has Minuteman III ballistic missiles capable of delivering nuclear warheads out to 13,000 kilometers. China's Dongfeng series of ballistic missiles have large ranges to deliver nuclear warheads, including the Dongfeng 31, capable of nuclear strike out to over 11,000 kilometers. And remember, the land leg of India's own nuclear command has the Agni 5 missile, capable of carrying out a nuclear attack out to 5,500 kilometers or more. All of these long-range missile systems are operational and ready to be deployed at short notice. And in response to Russia's nuclear signaling, are in fact on reciprocal high alert. And apart from land and sea, there's always the aerial option for nuclear bombing, very much like the first and only nuclear attack over Hiroshima and Nagasaki in 1945. The aerial option exists to this day with nuclear powers. Russia, which has been using the Kinzhal air-launched ballistic missile in Ukraine, has been fitting them with non-nuclear warheads. But the missile is capable of nuclear strike as well, and is part of Russia's strategic arsenal, with the missile deployable from MiG-31 fighters as well as Tu-22 bombers. The United States' nuclear air delivery platforms include the world's first stealth bomber, the B-2 Spirit, an enigmatic airplane capable of penetrating highly contested airspace for strategic bombing, and the monster B-52 Stratofortress, an 8-engined behemoth that's seen half a century of nuclear readiness. What we're telling you is that the world has enough nuclear weapons and delivery systems to doom us into non-existence in a flash of a second. Weapons that were developed during the Second World War and then proliferated as a method to keep the post-war peace. While they haven't stopped wars and destruction, they've certainly ensured there hasn't been another nuclear exchange after Hiroshima and Nagasaki. But with the world's biggest powers turning up the nuclear heat, it's only natural that the world is on edge. Bureau Report, India Today.
War is an extension of politics by other means, and war, let's never make any mistake, is a terrible thing. But war is upon the world, and we will continue to report it factually and with as much information as possible right here on Battle Cry, right here on India Today. Thanks for watching.